Chapter 6. The Major Scale. A scale is a collection of notes that can be used to create melodies and harmonies. Most scales in common usage are diatonic scales. These are comprised of 7 distinct and successive pitches represented by the 7 letters of the musical alphabet, with the addition of a repeated octave. An example would be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, with the last A an octave higher than the first A. There are several types of scales, and they can be initiated on any note of the piano keyboard, including the black notes. The first diatonic scale to consider in detail is the major scale, as it is the basis for most of the music we hear. To play the C major scale, simply start on the pitch C on the keyboard and play every white note until you reach the next C, as shown here. The quality of the major scale is dependent upon a succession of second intervals with particular qualities. You can see from the keyboard that there is no black note between E and F, and neither is there one between B and C. Therefore, these pairs are comprised of intervals that are smaller than the other pairs of second intervals. Most of the second intervals in the scale are major seconds, but the interval between E and F and also between B and C are minor seconds. This is shown here in the scale formula. Notice that the major second interval is abbreviated as capital M2, and the minor second interval is abbreviated as lowercase m2. Scale formulas, such as those shown in this example 6.2, always show the intervallic distances between pairs of notes, and in most cases, these intervals are a series of major and minor seconds. When you sing the major scale, you should be able to hear that the distance your voice moves when singing a minor second is smaller than the distance it moves when singing a major second. To sing pitches, we use a system called Solmization, in which each pitch is assigned a syllable. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. There are countless melodies written using the C major scale. The composer allows the notes of the scale to move up and down and incorporates an interesting rhythm, as shown in these examples. You should sing these melodies using the solmization syllables provided beneath the notes. Do, do, ti, la, la, so, so, fa, mi, fa, so, do, re, fa, mi, re, do. Do, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, so, mi, so, fa, mi, re, fa, mi, re, do. The tones of the major scale take on a certain functional character once we hear them in the context of a song. When used effectively, the tones create a kind of musical syntax, almost like the sentences and phrases in speech. In fact, each melody in the example we saw, 6.4, presents a satisfying musical unit that seems to have a complete musical sense, and such units are called phrases. In both examples, the first note of the scale, do, is a strong starting point and also a satisfactory ending point. Notice that the fifth note of the scale, so, also seems important as an object of arrival, as seen at the beginnings of measure 2 and 3 of both melodies. When the pitches have a strong sense of functionality like this, we say that the music is tonal and that it exhibits a sense of tonality. The root word tone of these terms refers to the fact that there is a central tone, do in most cases, where the music starts and then often returns. To make this more clear in an analytical sense, we often employ two other ways of naming the tones in the scale. The first is to use numerical scale degrees, and this is illustrated here. As you can see, this method of labeling is quite simple. We number the scale tones from 1 to 7 and put that little caret sign over the numbers. When we see the symbol with a caret over the 1, we say scale degree 1. And here's yet another way to name the scale degrees using descriptive terms: tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, leading tone, tonic. These terms will be covered in subsequent chapters in more detail after important harmonic concepts are covered. For now, we will explain just a few of them. The term tonic on scale degree 1 implies the central tone of the scale. The term dominant on the 5th scale degree implies a certain importance that we saw in both melodies back in example 6.4, where the 5th note of the scale was an important object of arrival. The term leading tone on the 7th scale degree is so called because it has a tendency to continue upward to the tonic pitch. You can hear this clearly by playing the scale from the tonic pitch upward and stopping on the leading tone. It will always seem to be an unsatisfactory stopping point that yearns for completion by resolving up to the tonic pitch. Once we understand the formula for creating the sound of the major scale, we can replicate this sound starting on any pitch of the keyboard. For example, we can start on the pitch G and write a diatonic set of pitches, as shown. However, when you play these pitches on the keyboard, as you should do, you will hear that they do not have the same sound as the C major scale that we have studied before. This is because the formula of major and minor seconds is different, as you can see by the labels in this example. The major and minor second intervals at the end of the scale seem to be misplaced. To fix this, we will need to use the actual major scale formula introduced in example 6.2 and adjust the notes accordingly. This is easiest to do on a keyboard, as shown here. In order to create the major second interval between the 6th and 7th scale degrees, it was necessary to use a black note. As you know, each black note can have two names. These are called enharmonics. But we must call this note F sharp and not G flat. This is because diatonic scales, as defined at the beginning of this chapter, must use every note of the musical alphabet. And if we notate that 7th note of the scale is G flat, there would be no pitch for the letter F. Now this is what the G scale looks like on the staff using the F clef. You should play it on the piano to confirm that it really does sound like a major scale. You should go to Check Your Understanding 6.1 on page 75 and try writing the notes of the F major scale. When you build various major scales, you will find several that require flats and several others that require sharps in order to conform to the formula. There are no major scales that require both sharps and flats. You should practice building a scale that requires several sharps. Now you should go to Check Your Understanding 6.2 and using the same steps as before, build an E major scale on the staff and on the keyboard. Sometimes a major scale requires that one of the white notes on the keyboard be notated as an enharmonic, flat, or sharp note. This is the case for the G-flat major scale. If we wish to build a scale of G-flat major, we would start on G-flat and make sure to use every letter of the musical alphabet up to the next G-flat. If we do this correctly, the major scale pitches will always alternate line space, line space, line space. As done previously, we will use the keyboard and the major scale formula to find the correct pitches. Careful application of the formula results in quite a few flats for the G-flat scale. While it may seem peculiar to identify the fourth note as a C-flat instead of a B, this pitch identity is necessary so that all the letters of the musical alphabet are used. It is also necessary when the scale is notated on the staff, as this will result in an alternating line space, line space, line space appearance that is much easier for the musicians to interpret and play.